The sun had just begun to rise over the wide, open plains when the rancher, John, stepped out of his small wooden cabin. The morning air was crisp and fresh, filled with the smell of wild grass and the faint aroma of horses in the stable. John had been living on this ranch for years, tending to the land, the animals, and the quiet rhythm of daily life. It was a life of routine, yet one he cherished. The rolling hills, the endless sky, and the gentle creeks made him feel connected to the world in a way no town ever could. As he walked toward the stable to feed the horses, John noticed footprints in the soft earth near the creek. They were unlike anything he had seen before, delicate, precise, and almost hidden beneath the morning mist. Curiosity stirred in him. People did not often wander this far from the main trail. He wondered who might be out here so early. While John was thinking about the footprints, he heard a faint sound, a soft humming, almost like a song carried by the wind. It was gentle and calming, a melody that seemed to belong to the land itself. He followed the sound carefully, moving past the wooden fence that marked the boundary of his property and stepping into the meadow beyond. The grass brushed against his legs, wet with morning dew, and the birds above chirped cheerfully, as if guiding him forward. There, by the edge of the forest, he saw them. Two sisters, moving gracefully through the trees, their presence almost ethereal. Their eyes were bright, filled with life and intelligence, and they carried an air of mystery that made John pause. He had never met anyone like them before. They were clearly not from the nearby towns, their clothes simple but woven with skill and care, adorned with small patterns that told a story of a culture far different from his own. The sisters noticed him almost at the same moment. There was no fear in their gaze, only cautious curiosity. They stopped walking and watched him with quiet attention, as if trying to understand his intentions. John raised his hands slowly, a gesture of peace, and offered a gentle smile. The silence between them stretched for a few moments, filled only with the sounds of the morning, wind in the trees, the distant lowing of cattle, and the soft rustle of leaves. Finally, one of the sisters stepped forward. Her voice was soft but firm. "You have seen us," she said simply. John nodded. "I didn't mean to intrude," he replied. "I was just following a sound, a song. It seemed to be calling me." The sisters exchanged a glance, and then both smiled faintly. The air around them felt lighter, as though the land itself recognized something important in this meeting. John spent the next hours talking with the sisters. They shared stories of their life, of their family, and of the land they had grown up on. They spoke of the forest, the rivers, and the animals that roamed freely, treating the land with respect and care. John listened intently, fascinated by the way they described their world, so alive and vibrant compared to the quiet routines of his own life. He felt as though he was seeing the world through new eyes, and the excitement of discovery filled him with energy he hadn't felt in years. By midday, John had invited the sisters to his ranch. They were hesitant at first, unfamiliar with the ways of settlers and ranch life, but curiosity won. They walked beside him as he showed them the horses, the barn, and the small vegetable garden he tended with care. The sisters marveled at the simplicity and order of his work, asking questions and observing closely. John, in turn, was fascinated by their knowledge of the natural world, the plants, and the hidden signs of the land that he had never noticed himself. The hours passed quickly. By the time the sun reached its peak, the three of them were seated under a large oak tree near the creek, sharing a simple meal of bread, cheese, and fresh water. The conversation flowed easily now, and John realized that he felt a connection he could not explain. There was a sense of trust, building, fragile but strong, as if the land itself had brought them together for a purpose. Before they left, one of the sisters handed John a small bundle of herbs and flowers. "For your land," she said. They will grow strong if you treat them well." John accepted the gift with gratitude, feeling a warmth spread through him. It was a small gesture, yet it carried meaning beyond words. It spoke of respect, friendship, and a bond with the land that went deeper than ownership or work. It was something spiritual, something lasting. As they disappeared into the forest, John stood by the creek, watching them vanish among the trees. He knew his life would never be quite the same. Something had shifted in him, a spark of curiosity and wonder that had been dormant for too long. The day had begun as any other, yet it ended with the promise of change, adventure, and the possibility of a connection that would shape the years to come. John returned to his cabin that evening with a quiet smile on his face. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the plains and painting the sky with hues of gold and orange. The horses nickered softly as he passed, and the wind carried the faint scent of the herbs the sisters had given him. He felt a sense of peace, knowing that the world was larger and more beautiful than he had realized, and that new stories, new experiences were waiting just beyond the horizon. Little did John know, this encounter was only the beginning. The sisters' presence would touch not just his life, but the lives of everyone around him, bringing challenges, lessons, and moments of joy he could never have imagined. The land, once quiet and predictable, now seemed alive with possibility, and John felt ready to embrace whatever was to come. The next morning, John woke to the sound of roosters crowing and the gentle rustling of the wind through the trees. The memory of meeting the sisters lingered in his mind like a bright spark. He couldn't help but replay their words, their laughter, and the quiet intensity of their eyes. Something about them had stirred a part of him that had been dormant for years, a sense of wonder and curiosity about the world that he had almost forgotten. After breakfast, John decided to follow the creek a little further. He felt a strong pull to explore the areas near his ranch that he rarely visited. The sisters' presence had awakened a longing for discovery in him, and he wanted to see the land through fresh eyes, as they might have seen it. As he walked, the early sunlight filtered through the branches, creating patterns of gold and green on the ground. Birds flitted overhead, calling to one another, and the soft sound of the creek flowing over the rocks provided a calming rhythm. John paused near a cluster of wildflowers growing beside the water. He remembered the bundle of herbs the sisters had given him, and a sense of reverence filled him. It wasn't just about the plants themselves. It was the care and attention they represented. He realized that life, much like the land, needed nurturing, patience, and respect. With this thought in mind, he carefully planted some of the herbs near the creek, hoping that they would thrive and bring the land a small touch of beauty. As he continued along the path, he noticed movement near the edge of the forest. At first, he thought it might be an animal, but then he saw the familiar figures of the sisters. They were walking slowly, examining the plants and the soil, their expressions thoughtful and serene. When they saw John, they waved, and he returned the gesture with a broad smile. There was a warmth in their presence that made the morning feel richer and brighter, as if the world had become more vibrant simply because they were near. John joined them, and together they walked along the creek, talking quietly. The sisters shared stories of the animals they had encountered in the forest, explaining their habits and the ways in which they interacted with the land. They spoke of plants that healed wounds, trees that marked hidden paths, and streams that never ran dry. John listened carefully, fascinated by their knowledge and the deep respect they had for nature. It was a perspective he had never considered fully, despite years of working the land. By late morning, they reached a small clearing that John had never noticed before. It was surrounded by tall trees, and sunlight streamed down in golden beams, illuminating the soft grass beneath. In the center of the clearing was a large, flat rock, perfect for sitting and resting. The sister suggested they take a break there, and John agreed, grateful for the chance to sit and absorb the beauty of the place. While resting, the sisters spoke of their family, telling John about their childhood and the lessons they had learned from their elders. They spoke of courage, kindness, and the importance of living in harmony with the world around them. John found himself captivated not just by their words, but by the way they spoke, calmly, confidently, and with a sense of purpose that made everything they said feel meaningful. He realized that they had experienced much in their lives, yet there was no bitterness in them, only understanding and wisdom. As the sun climbed higher, John noticed clouds beginning to gather in the sky. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves, and he felt a sense of anticipation. The sisters stood and gestured toward the forest, suggesting they explore further before the weather changed. John agreed, and together they moved carefully through the undergrowth. Every step seemed to reveal something new: a bird's nest tucked in the branches, a patch of wild mushrooms hidden in the grass, or the delicate curve of a fern unfurling toward the light. They walked in silence for a while, letting the forest speak to them in its own language. John felt a sense of peace he had never experienced before. The sisters' presence was calming yet invigorating. It was as if their energy blended with the rhythm of the land itself. He began to understand that this was more than a simple visit. It was a lesson in seeing the world with attention and care, in recognizing the beauty in the small details often overlooked. Suddenly, one of the sisters stopped and pointed to a small grove of trees where the sunlight created sparkling patterns on the leaves. "This place is special," she said softly. "It reminds us that every corner of the land holds a story, if we only take the time to look." John nodded, feeling the truth of her words. He had spent so many years rushing through tasks, tending to the ranch, and worrying about the future that he had forgotten to pause and truly see the world around him. They spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the grove, discovering hidden paths, and learning about the plants and animals in the area. John took careful notes, eager to remember everything. The sisters showed him how to identify different plants by touch, smell, and shape, and explained which ones could be used for food, medicine, or decoration. He marveled at their knowledge and the ease with which they moved through the land, as if it were an extension of themselves. As the sky began to darken with the approach of evening, John and the sisters returned to the clearing near the creek. The air was cooler now, and the sounds of the forest shifted as nocturnal creatures began to stir. John felt a mix of tiredness and exhilaration. The day had been full of new experiences, lessons, and discoveries. Sitting by the creek, he reflected on how much his perspective had changed in just one day. The world felt larger, more intricate, and filled with possibilities he had never imagined. Before leaving, the sisters shared one final thought with John. "Remember," one said gently, "the land gives life to those who respect it, and knowledge grows for those who are patient. Treat every moment as a gift, and it will never be wasted." John listened carefully, letting the words sink in. They felt like a promise, a guide, and a reminder of something he had always known deep down, but had rarely practiced. When they finally parted ways, John watched the sisters disappear into the forest once more. The memory of their smiles, their wisdom, and the serenity they carried stayed with him as he made his way back to the ranch. He felt a quiet determination to care for the land in a new way, to embrace patience, observation, and respect in everything he did. The day had changed him, and he knew that the journey was only beginning. That evening, as he sat on the porch watching the sunset, John felt a sense of gratitude he had rarely known. The world had shifted slightly, opening doors he hadn't realized were there. He thought about the sisters, their stories, and the hidden corners of the land, and he felt a renewed energy and hope. There was much to learn, much to explore, and the promise of adventure lay just beyond the horizon. The quiet night settled over the ranch, but John's mind remained alive with thoughts and possibilities. He knew that his life had been touched in a profound way, and that the lessons of this day would guide him in the weeks and months to come. The land felt richer, the world fuller, and he was ready to meet whatever came next with curiosity, courage, and an open heart. The next morning, John woke to a quiet and gentle dawn. The sky was painted with soft shades of pink and orange, and a thin mist lingered over the fields. The memory of the previous day, the laughter, the stories, and the sisters' wisdom still lingered in his mind. It was as if their presence had opened a new door in his life, and he was eager to explore where it might lead. After tending to the horses and feeding the cattle, John prepared a simple breakfast. He sat on the porch, sipping hot tea and gazing at the distant hills. Something about the land seemed different now. The colors were sharper, the sounds richer, and even the wind felt more alive. It was as if the earth itself was speaking to him, inviting him to discover its secrets. He remembered a part of the forest the sisters had mentioned, a secluded glade that was said to hold rare wildflowers, and a small spring that was hidden from most travelers. Curiosity tugged at him, and he decided that today he would find it. He packed a small satchel with water, some bread, and a notebook to record anything interesting he discovered. The sun was climbing higher when he set off, walking along familiar paths that now seemed new and exciting under the lens of exploration. The forest was alive with activity. Birds darted between branches, squirrels chased one another, and the occasional deer peeked from behind the trees. John moved slowly, observing every detail, the shape of the leaves, the way the sunlight glimmered on the water, and the tiny insects crawling over the moss-covered ground. He remembered the sisters' lessons, to look closely, to listen carefully, and to respect every living thing. With each step, he felt a growing sense of connection to the land, as though he was part of its story, rather than merely a visitor. After walking for some time, John came across a narrow trail that seemed less traveled. The grass was taller here, and branches arched overhead, creating a natural tunnel of greenery. He followed it carefully, feeling both excitement and a hint of caution. He knew that the forest could be unpredictable, but the thought of discovering something beautiful and hidden gave him courage. Eventually, the trail opened into a small glade, just as the sisters had described. The sunlight streamed down, illuminating a carpet of wildflowers that seemed to shimmer in the gentle breeze. There were flowers of every color: violet, yellow, white, and pink, each one delicate and vibrant. In the center of the glade, a small spring bubbled quietly, its water crystal clear. John knelt beside it, cupping the cool water in his hands and taking a refreshing drink. The taste was pure and invigorating, a reminder of the simple gifts the land could offer. He spent the next few hours exploring the glade, sketching the flowers and writing notes about the plants and wildlife he observed. He discovered tiny frogs hiding among the rocks, butterflies dancing above the blossoms, and even a pair of birds building a nest in a low tree. John marveled at the harmony of the place, the way every creature seemed to exist in balance with its surroundings. It was a lesson in patience and observation, one that the sisters had been teaching him all along. As the day grew warmer, John noticed movement near the edge of the glade. At first, he thought it might be a deer, but then he realized it was the sisters. They appeared quietly, as if they had been following the trail of his thoughts, and smiled when they saw him. "You found it," one said softly. John nodded, feeling a surge of pride and happiness. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined," he replied. The sisters laughed lightly, a sound that blended with the wind and the soft rustling of the leaves. They joined him in the glade, and together they examined the plants, comparing notes and pointing out details John had missed. One of the sisters showed him how to identify flowers by their leaves and the texture of their petals. She explained which plants could be used for tea, which for healing, and which were purely for beauty. John listened intently, asking questions and marveling at their knowledge. The sisters' presence made the day feel lighter, richer, and more meaningful. After a while, John suggested they rest beside the spring. The sisters agreed, and they sat quietly, letting the sounds of the forest wash over them. The sunlight filtered through the trees, creating patterns on the ground that shifted with the breeze. John felt a deep sense of peace and contentment. He realized that the day was not just about discovering a glade, it was about learning to slow down, to appreciate the world, and to connect with those around him in a meaningful way. The sisters shared stories of their family's traditions, explaining how they had learned to read the signs of the land, the stars, and the weather. They spoke of rituals that honored nature, lessons passed down through generations, and the importance of balance and respect. John was fascinated. He had always worked hard on his ranch, but he realized that there was much more to life than toil and routine. There was wisdom to be gained from listening, observing, and understanding the world in a deeper way. As the afternoon wore on, clouds began to gather in the sky, signaling an approaching storm. The sisters suggested they return to the ranch before the rain began. John agreed, though he felt a tinge of disappointment at leaving the glade. They walked together through the forest, the air growing cooler and the scent of rain filling their noses. The journey back was quiet, filled with the anticipation of the storm and the satisfaction of a day well spent. When they reached the ranch, the first drops of rain began to fall, soft and gentle at first, then heavier as the sky darkened. John led the sisters to the porch where they could watch the storm safely. The rain tapped against the roof and windows, creating a soothing rhythm that matched the calm in John's heart. He realized that he had never felt such a sense of harmony with the world before. The land, the water, the sky, and the people around him were all connected in ways he was only beginning to understand. Over a simple meal that evening, John reflected on the day. He felt grateful for the guidance and companionship of the sisters, for the lessons they had shared, and for the beauty of the land that had revealed itself to him. He knew that the knowledge he had gained today would influence not only his work on the ranch, but also his perspective on life. He felt more patient, more attentive, and more connected than ever before. Before leaving for the night, one of the sisters handed John a small bundle of seeds. "Plant these carefully," she said. "They will remind you of today and the lessons you have learned." John accepted the gift with gratitude, realizing that it symbolized more than just plants. It represented growth, learning, and the promise of new beginnings. He carefully placed the seeds in a safe spot, planning to sow them the next morning with care and attention. As the storm continued outside, John sat by the fire, thinking about the future. He knew that his life was changing in ways he could not yet fully understand. The sisters had brought knowledge, perspective, and inspiration into his world, and he felt ready to embrace the challenges and joys that lay ahead. The ranch, once a place of routine and solitude, now seemed alive with possibility. That night, John went to bed with a sense of anticipation. He dreamed not only of the forest and the glade, but of the countless adventures, lessons, and discoveries that awaited him. The sisters' presence had sparked something within him, a desire to learn, explore, and connect more deeply with the world. And as he drifted into sleep, he felt certain that the days ahead would bring not just change, but growth, understanding, and moments of unexpected wonder. The following morning, John woke to the gentle light of dawn spilling across his cabin. The air was fresh, carrying the earthy scent of rain from the previous evening. The storm had left the fields gleaming, each blade of grass sparkling with droplets of water. John felt a renewed sense of energy. He knew today would be different, a day filled with opportunities to learn more and to strengthen the connection he had begun to build with the sisters and the land itself. After finishing his morning chores, John gathered the small bundle of seeds the sisters had given him. He had spent the night thinking about the right spot to plant them, and he decided on a patch near the creek where the soil was rich and moist. He worked carefully, digging small holes and placing each seed with precision. As he pressed the soil gently over them, he felt a sense of hope. These seeds symbolized growth, not just in the garden but in himself as well. Each one seemed to carry a promise of learning, adventure, and transformation. Once the planting was complete, John noticed a familiar figure approaching through the mist. It was the sisters. Their presence always seemed to arrive quietly, almost as if they were part of the land itself. Today, however, there was a sense of urgency in their steps. John greeted them warmly and they smiled, but there was a hint of concern in their eyes. "We have something important to show you," one of them said, her voice calm but serious. Intrigued, John followed them as they led him toward the forest. The path they took was one John had never noticed before. It wound through dense trees, over small streams, and across patches of wildflowers that swayed gently in the breeze. The sisters moved with ease, pointing out subtle signs along the way, the tracks of animals, the bends of the creek that indicated hidden springs, and clusters of plants that could be used for food or medicine. John followed carefully, absorbing every detail. Their knowledge of the land seemed limitless, and he felt fortunate to witness it firsthand. After some time, they arrived at a clearing that John had never seen before. It was larger than the glade he had visited before, surrounded by towering trees whose leaves formed a natural canopy. In the center of the clearing was a small, circular stone formation, almost like a natural table, surrounded by low rocks suitable for sitting. The sisters gestured toward it and invited John to sit. "This place has been special to our family for generations," one of them explained. "We come here to think, to plan, and to learn from the land." John sat down, feeling the coolness of the stones beneath him and the gentle rustling of the trees above. The sisters began to teach him ways to observe nature more deeply. They showed him how to read the signs of changing weather by the color of the clouds and the patterns of the wind. They pointed out how the animals behaved before a storm and how certain plants could signal the arrival of seasonal changes. John listened carefully, realizing that these lessons were about more than survival. They were about understanding the rhythms of life itself. As they continued, the sisters spoke of harmony and balance. "Everything has a place," one said, "and everything affects something else. When we respect the world around us, it respects us in return." John nodded thoughtfully. He had always worked hard on his ranch, but he now understood that true care involved more than effort. It required attention, observation, and respect for the interconnectedness of all things. The sisters' wisdom was opening his eyes to a new way of living, one that honored both the land and the creatures that depended on it. After several hours of teaching and observation, they broke for a simple meal. John had brought some bread and cheese, and the sisters shared some wild fruits and herbs they had collected from the forest. They ate quietly, enjoying the peaceful sounds of the clearing, the birds singing, the leaves rustling, and the distant babble of a stream. John felt a deep sense of gratitude. The sisters' presence had turned an ordinary day into a meaningful experience. Filled with lessons and insights he would carry with him forever. In the afternoon, the sisters suggested that they try a small project together. They wanted to build a simple structure near the clearing that could serve as a shelter for observing wildlife or resting during long walks. John agreed eagerly. Using fallen branches, stones, and other natural materials, they worked together, learning from one another and sharing ideas. The activity was both practical and symbolic, teaching John about patience, teamwork, and the value of combining effort with creativity. By the time the structure was complete, the sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the clearing. John stood back and admired their work. The small shelter blended seamlessly with the environment, a testament to careful planning and respect for nature. The sisters smiled, clearly pleased with the outcome. "This will remind you," one said, "that even small actions, when done with thought and care, can create something lasting and meaningful." John felt the truth of her words resonate deeply within him. It was a lesson that applied not only to the land, but to life itself. As they prepared to leave the clearing, the sisters led John to a small path that he had overlooked. Along the way, they pointed out more signs of the forest's hidden life: a patch of rare mushrooms, a tree hollow where a family of owls had taken residence, and a cluster of berries ready for harvest. John marveled at how much he had missed in his years of walking the forest alone. The sisters' guidance had opened his eyes, teaching him to see not just with his eyes, but with his heart and mind. When they returned to the ranch, the sky was painted with the warm colors of sunset. The horses nickered softly as John tended to them, and the air was filled with the comforting scent of earth and grass. He felt a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment that went beyond physical labor. Today had been about discovery, learning, and connection. The sisters' wisdom had transformed his perspective, giving him a deeper appreciation for the land and a renewed sense of purpose in his life. That evening, John reflected on the lessons of the day: the planting of the seeds, the exploration of the hidden clearing, and the construction of the shelter had all taught him something important. He realized that growth was not just about hard work or knowledge. It was about observation, patience, and understanding the subtle connections between all things. The sisters' teachings had shown him a path toward living in harmony with the world, a way of seeing that could transform ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences. Before retiring for the night, John walked to the spot where he had planted the seeds. The rain from the previous day had nourished them, and he could already see tiny sprouts beginning to emerge from the soil. He smiled, feeling a quiet satisfaction. These small plants were a symbol of the change taking place in his life. Just as he had nurtured the seeds, he was nurturing a new way of living, one filled with awareness, gratitude, and respect for the land and the people around him. As night fell, John sat by the fireplace in his cabin, thinking about the journey that lay ahead. He knew that the sisters' guidance would continue to shape his life in ways he could not yet fully understand. Their presence had already opened doors to new knowledge, new experiences, and a deeper connection to the world. He felt ready to embrace the challenges and joys that awaited him, confident that each day would bring lessons, discoveries, and moments of unexpected wonder. John drifted off to sleep with a sense of anticipation. The forest, the glade, and the shelter he had helped build seemed to linger in his mind, a reminder that life was a continuous journey of growth and learning. The seeds he had planted, both in the soil and in his heart, would continue to grow, guiding him toward a future filled with purpose, insight, and harmony. He knew that his life was changing, and he welcomed it with an open heart and an eager spirit. The following morning, John awoke with a sense of purpose. The past days had been unlike any he had experienced before. The visits with the sisters, the lessons of the forest, and the simple joys of planting and exploring had awakened something within him, a feeling of possibility and connection he had never known. The ranch no longer felt like a place of routine. It had become a living, breathing world full of potential and discovery. After breakfast, John took a walk toward the creek, noticing the small sprouts of the seeds he had planted. They were growing steadily, a sign of new beginnings and the care he had invested in them. He felt a sense of pride and responsibility. These small plants symbolized his own growth, and he realized that he was learning to nurture not just the land, but his understanding, his patience, and his perspective on life. As he walked, he noticed a movement near the edge of the forest. The sisters were approaching once more, their presence as calm and reassuring as ever. Today, however, there was a sense of excitement in their step, as if they had a special plan for him. John greeted them warmly, eager to see what adventures awaited. "We have something to show you," one of the sisters said. "It is a place that holds many lessons, and it is time for you to see it." Intrigued, John followed them deeper into the forest. The path led them to a hidden valley, a part of the land John had never explored. The valley was lush and vibrant, filled with wildflowers, tall grasses, and the gentle sounds of a stream winding through it. The air was filled with the scent of pine and earth, and sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a warm golden glow over everything. John felt a sense of awe. The valley seemed untouched by time, a secret sanctuary that few had ever seen. The sisters led John to a large, flat rock near the stream. They asked him to sit and observe the surroundings carefully. "This place teaches patience," one of the sisters explained. "It teaches observation and understanding. Watch closely, and you will learn more than words can tell." John sat quietly, taking in the sights and sounds. He noticed how the birds interacted with one another, how the insects moved among the flowers, and how the water flowed effortlessly over the stones. Each detail seemed to carry a lesson about balance, harmony, and the rhythm of life. After a while, the sisters began to explain the history of the valley. They spoke of their ancestors, who had cared for the land for generations, learning from it and teaching others to respect it. They told John how every plant, every rock, and every stream had a purpose and a story. John listened intently, fascinated by their knowledge and the deep connection they had with the natural world. He realized that their wisdom was more than just practical. It was a way of seeing life itself, an approach that combined respect, attention, and understanding. The afternoon was spent exploring the valley. The sisters showed John hidden trails, clusters of rare plants, and small caves where animals had made their homes. They demonstrated how to read subtle signs in the environment, such as changes in the color of leaves or the patterns of animal tracks, which could indicate weather changes or the presence of water. John was amazed by how much he had overlooked in his previous years of working on the ranch. With the sisters' guidance, he was learning to see the land in a completely new way. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of pink, orange, and gold, the sisters led John to a hill overlooking the valley. From this vantage point, the entire landscape stretched before him: the forest, the creek, the fields, and the distant mountains. John felt a profound sense of connection. The land was not just a place to live or work. It was alive, full of lessons, beauty, and potential. The sisters smiled, seeing the wonder in his eyes. "This is the world we wanted you to see," one said. "It is a gift, but also a responsibility. Respect it, learn from it, and you will always find your place within it." As evening fell, they returned to the ranch. The sky was deepening into twilight, and the first stars began to appear. John felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. The experiences of the past days had changed him. He understood now that life was about more than daily routines or immediate concerns. It was about awareness, respect, learning, and nurturing both the land and oneself. He realized that every day offered a chance to grow, to discover, and to connect with the world around him. That night, around the fireplace, John reflected on everything he had learned. The planting of seeds, the exploration of hidden glades, the construction of the shelter, and the lessons in the valley had all contributed to a new understanding of life. He realized that growth was a combination of effort, observation, and patience. The sisters had taught him that wisdom comes not just from experience but from paying attention, asking questions, and being open to the world's subtle teachings. Before going to bed, John stepped outside to look at the stars. The sky was clear, and the constellations shone brightly above. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the lessons, the experiences, and the companions who had guided him. The forest, the valley, and even the small sprouts of his planted seeds seemed to reflect the journey he was on, a journey of growth, understanding, and harmony with the world. In the following days, John continued to explore, learn, and care for the ranch with a renewed perspective. He spent time teaching the young workers how to observe the land, showing them the techniques the sisters had shared, and encouraging them to treat every plant, animal, and corner of the land with respect. His own connection with the land deepened with each passing day, and the ranch began to thrive in ways he had never imagined. The sisters continued to visit, each time bringing new lessons, stories, and perspectives. They taught John about the cycles of nature, the importance of community, and the quiet strength that comes from patience and observation. Through their guidance, John realized that true fulfillment comes from understanding one's place in the world and nurturing that connection with care and attention. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the ranch was bathed in golden light, John stood by the creek, reflecting on the journey he had taken. The seeds he had planted had grown taller. The shelter stood as a symbol of his teamwork with the sisters, and the valley had become a place of quiet learning and reflection. He felt a profound sense of accomplishment, not just in the work he had done, but in the growth he had achieved within himself. John understood now that life was a continuous journey. Each day brought opportunities to learn, to observe, and to connect. The land had become more than a place of work. It was a teacher, a companion, and a source of inspiration. The sisters had shown him how to see, listen, and respect, and their wisdom would remain with him forever. As the night settled over the ranch, John felt a sense of quiet joy and contentment. He knew that the lessons of the past days would continue to guide him, shaping not only his actions but his thoughts, his decisions, and his understanding of the world. He had discovered a deeper way of living, one that embraced the beauty of nature, the value of patience, and the importance of connection. And so, John's life on the ranch was never the same again. He had been transformed by the experiences he shared with the sisters, by the lessons of the land, and by the realization that growth and understanding come from attentiveness, respect, and an open heart. The ranch flourished, the land was cared for, and John's life was enriched beyond measure. Every sunrise brought new possibilities, every sunset a sense of accomplishment, and every day a reminder of the journey he had begun, one of harmony, wisdom, and discovery that would continue for years to come.